From the outside, my life appears to be ideal. A good husband, a lovely home, and a fulfilling career. 12 years of marriage to a man who adores me in ways I never imagined possible. His name is John Henderson. He's nice, thoughtful, and dependable. You would like him if you met him. Most people do, but there is a stillness between us, which has gotten louder with each passing year. We don't fight, we don't yell, and we don't have those dramatic scenes in movies where plates are flung and doors bang. Instead, we share a modest affection, a partnership based on mutual respect and understanding, or perhaps endurance. John loves me in his own way, and I adore him in mine. I know that seems unusual, even sad, but I can't deny the fact. We've established a good life together, one I don't want to give up, but there's a part of me, one I've tried to hide, that feels like it's fading away. It's been 10 years since we had sex. When we came to a standstill, I was 30 years old. 30. Do you know what it's like to close your eyes at night and realize that type of intimacy is no longer there? To lie next to someone you like but feel an almost unbearable distance between you? We discussed it once years ago. John looked at me with those sad, patient eyes and said, "I am sorry, but I just can't." And that was it. He said I was everything to him, and no one could love me like he did. He was not mistaken. He has always been there for me in every aspect except this one. He said that if I left, I might find passion somewhere, but I would never find love like his again, and I believed him. I told myself it didn't matter, that affection was enough, that having someone to hold my hand in the worst moments was more important than anything physical, and for a while that was true, but it now feels like a lie I've been telling myself to get by. Last week, we had a family vacation to MOS. It was John's idea, an opportunity to celebrate his brother-in-law Adam's 40th birthday. The villa was stunning, sitting atop a cliff overlooking the Aegean Sea. John's parents were present, as was his sister Eva and her husband Adam. We joked, ate, and hailed Adam's accomplishment with glasses of wine. Under the Greek skies, everything should have been great. I should have felt fortunate to be there, surrounded by people who care about me. But instead I felt hollow, the type of hole that no scenery, sunset, or laughing can fill. John was his normal self, doting and gentle yet distant in ways he most likely didn't recognize. Eva was her cheery, bouncy self, whereas Adam seemed different. When he speaks to you, he has a way of making you feel as if you are the only one in the room. That night, he saw something in me that no one else did. Perhaps he was the only one who dared to say it aloud. I kept replaying everything in my memory, trying to pinpoint exactly when things began to disintegrate. Was it when we were sitting at the table and our gazes locked for just a little too long? Was it the way he asked how I was doing, like if he truly wanted to know? Or was it later, when the rest had gone to bed and we remained up talking under the stars? I'm not sure. All I know is that something changed that night, and I couldn't stop it. I should have stopped it. I should have gotten up, gone to my room and shut the door, but I didn't, and now I don't know how to live with my actions. Adam has been a part of my family since I can remember. He married Eva when they were kids, and they have been together for nearly 20 years, have 2 children, and live a life that appears picture-perfect on the surface. They recently purchased a nice house with a large yard where their children may play. It's the kind of life many fantasize about, but dreams are fleeting. Adam and Eva, like everyone else, have had their challenges. Money is tight for them. They can't split up without losing all they've fought so hard for. And Eva adores him, as she always has. If she ever found out, God, I can't even finish that thought. I can't imagine how much grief it would inflict on her or their children. But even knowing that didn't stop me. It all started innocently. At least that's what I tell myself to make it seem less horrible. Adam was simply being courteous, asking how I was doing, and paying attention in a unique way. He's always had a way of putting people at ease, as if you could tell him anything and he'd never condemn you for it. But this time it wasn't just kindness. There was something else in his gaze that made my heart race and my stomach turn. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was imagining things, reading too much into a casual glance or a pleasant gesture. But I knew I wasn't. John was his normal self, distant in ways I had become accustomed to. He spent the majority of his time with his parents, helping them plan. outings, taking care of the minor details as he usually does. He wasn't quite inattentive, but he wasn't present. And Adam spotted the flaws in the facade I'd been working so hard to maintain. There was a minor moment that I keep reliving in my memory. We were sitting by the pool one afternoon. The kids were splashing about, Eva was talking with John's mother, and Adam and I were on different ends of the table. I was staring out at the ocean, lost in my thoughts, when he asked, "Are you okay?" It was such a simple question, but the way he asked it, it wasn't like how people ask when they're just being polite. He really meant it. I looked at him, and for a second I forgot how to speak. There was something in his expression, a mix of curiosity and concern, that made me feel exposed, like he could see right through me. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile, but he didn't let it go. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice softer this time. "You seem, I don't know, tired." I wanted to tell him everything in that moment. I wanted to say, "No, I'm not okay. I'm lonely, and I feel invisible, and I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending everything's fine." But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "I'm fine," and then he smiled at me. Not the kind of smile people give out of obligation, but a real one, warm understanding, like he knew exactly what I wasn't saying. That's when it started. It wasn't anything overt, just small moments. A shared laugh, a lingering glance, the way his hand brushed against mine when he passed me a drink. They were nothing, and yet they felt like everything. There was another night, not long after that, when everyone had gone to bed except the two of us. We sat outside under the stars, the sound of the waves filling the silence between us. We talked about nothing and everything. He told me about the stress he's been under at work, the pressure of trying to provide for his family, and the fights he and Eva have been having about money, and I told him more than I should have. I told him about John, about how much I love him but how lonely I feel, how it's been 10 years since we've been intimate, how sometimes late at night I lie awake wondering if this is all my life will ever be. Adam listened. He didn't interrupt or try to fix anything. He just listened, and when I looked at him, I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. Desire. I should have walked away then. I should have said good night and gone to bed. But I didn't. I stayed, and now I can't undo what's been done. If you've made it this far into the story, thank you. Your support means everything. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories like this one. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might find it meaningful. Your engagement helps us bring you more content that matters. The night of the celebration was magical in a way I hadn't expected. The villa was alive with laughter and music. The stars were out, scattered across the night sky like glitter on black velvet. Adam was in his element, the center of attention, cracking jokes and making everyone laugh. I watched him from across the table, my wine glass poised in front of me like a shield. John sat beside me, his hand resting lightly on my arm. He was happy that night. Caught up in the joy of celebrating his brother-in-law, he didn't notice the way my eyes kept drifting to Adam, the way I smiled a little too much at his jokes, or the warmth that spread through me every time our gazes met. As the night wore on, people began to drift away. The children went to bed first, followed by John's parents. Eva said goodnight not long after, pressing a soft kiss to Adam's cheek before heading to their room. John, ever the night owl, stayed up a bit longer, chatting with Adam and me about memories from their childhood. But even he eventually excused himself, leaving the two of us alone. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. We sat there for a while, the two of us, the sound of the waves crashing against the cliffs below. Adam poured us another round of wine, his movements unhurried, almost deliberate. "You know," he said, breaking the silence, "this has been one of the best birthdays I've ever had, and I think I have you to thank for that." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "What exactly are you talking about?" "I didn't do anything you did," he insisted. His voice heated and his gaze fixated on mine. "You've been, I'm not sure, different. You have made this vacation feel special in some way." His statements took me off guard. I wasn't used to being observed in that way, to having someone look at me as if I were more than just John's wife or a supporting role in someone else's story. "I believe you are giving me too much credit." I tried to deflect, but Adam refused to let it go. He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the table, his gaze unwavering. "Copy, you're amazing. I'm not sure if anyone has told you this recently, but you are, and I apologize if it doesn't feel like people view you that way." "I do." I felt my breath catch, my heart thumping so loudly that I was certain he could hear it. For a second, I wasn't sure what to say. I could and should have stopped it then, but I didn't. Instead, I stared at him, really looked at him, and saw the same loneliness I'd been feeling reflected in his eyes. It was like standing in front of a mirror for the first time and discovering how shattered you truly are. He reached out, and his hand brushed across mine, and I didn't back away. Keepy murmured softly, barely above a whisper. "If this is too much, tell me to stop." I should have mentioned it. I should have stood up and walked away or done something other than what I did next. But I didn't. Instead, I leaned closer, reducing the distance between us until our lips connected. It wasn't a planned or rational event. It was a collision of desire, longing, and anguish, a moment that felt both inevitable and impossible at the same time. The kiss deepened, and before I knew it, we were inside the villa, dark and quiet all around. My thoughts begged me to stop and think about John, Eva, and the kids, but my body did not listen. My hands sought his face, shoulders, and chest, as if they had their own thoughts. Every touch felt electric, and each moment was more powerful than the last. It wasn't just about want. It was about feeling alive, being noticed, and breaking free from the loneliness that had been my constant companion for so long. We ended up in one of the guest rooms, the door quietly closing behind us. The weight of our actions pressed down on me, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. I wasn't sure if we should do this, I muttered, my voice quivering. Adam gazed at me with a mixture of shame and want. "I don't either," he muttered, "but I can't pretend I don't want to," and that was it. There were no more words, only actions. Clothing abandoned in a haze of desperation, hands and mouths exploring terrain that should have been banned. We lay there in silence, the truth of our actions sinking in. My chest tightened, my mind racing with 1,000 things. "I'm sorry," I muttered softly, my voice barely audible. Adam turned to look at me, his face shaded by the weak light. "So am I," he said, "and then we did it again, twice in one night, twice too many, and now I don't know how to confront the people I've damaged, the people I care about. I'm not sure how to face myself." When I awoke the next morning, the sunlight spilling through the window seemed harsh, mocking the reality of what I'd done. It hit me all at once, like a tidal wave pulling me down. I lay there, staring at the ceiling. The previous night's events replayed in my head like a horrifying, vivid dream from which I could not wake. My first thought was John, sweet patient John, who was most likely up by now, making coffee for everyone as he always does on these excursions. How could I confront him? How could I sit across from him for breakfast knowing what I had done? And Eva, God, Eva, she trusts me. She has always trusted me. She told me her secrets, confided in me about her fears and concerns about Adam, and now I was the very thing she was terrified of. I felt nauseous, my stomach churned, and I considered throwing up right there in that unfamiliar bed. But I didn't. I pushed myself to get up to shower and put on the mask I'd be wearing for the rest of the trip. When I stepped into the kitchen, John grinned at me, his face lighting up in that familiar manner that used to make me feel safe. But now it only made me feel like the worst person alive. "Morning, see," he murmured, passing me a cup of coffee. I murmured something back, avoiding his gaze. I felt Adam's presence across the room, but I didn't dare to look at him. The remainder of the day passed in a haze. Every moment felt like I was walking on a tightrope, one bad step away from everything collapsing. I avoided being alone with Adam, Eva's questioning about why I appeared so quiet, and John's kind attempts to make me laugh. But the worst thing was not the dread of being discovered. It was the guilt, the way it gnawed at me, hollowing me out from within. Every time John touched my hand or smiled at me, it felt like a slap to the face. Every time Eva laughed or said how delighted she was that we'd all come on this trip, I felt a knife twist in my gut. I began to envision what would happen if the truth came out. John would be devastated. He's never been good at hiding his feelings, and I knew this would break him like nothing else. And Eva, I can't imagine what it would do to her or their children. So I made a decision to leave. I would ask for a divorce. I would not tell John why I couldn't. Instead, I would let him believe it was my fault that I had fallen. Anything but the truth seemed wrong, whether it was out of love or want. John deserves more than that. He deserves better than I. I've been rehearsing the conversation in my imagination, imagining what would happen. I'd sit him down and tell him I wasn't happy and that it would be better for both of us if we parted ways. He'd ask why and I'd lie. I'd say it wasn't him, that I needed time to figure myself out, that I'd always loved him but couldn't stay. And then there's the selfish part of me that wonders if I could just keep this a secret, pretend it never happened, and get back to my life, marriage, and routine. But I can't even look myself in the mirror, let alone look him in the eyes. I've considered telling someone, anyone, just to get it off my chest. But who could I trust with this? Eva? No. John? Absolutely not. My mother? She'd never understand. So I'm here, lost in my own thoughts, seeking counsel from strangers because I don't know what else to do. Do I depart to spare them the grief of learning the truth? Or do I continue to live with this guilt, hoping it won't ruin me? I'm not sure how to proceed. Every road feels wrong, and the worst part is that I know that no matter what I do, someone will be wounded. It's getting difficult to keep it together. Eva keeps asking if I am okay. She says I seem strange, like if something is bothering me. I brush it aside, telling her I'm just sleepy and it's nothing. But I can see the concern in her eyes, and Adam is avoiding me. I assumed that would make things easier, but it doesn't. Every time I enter into a room, he looks away. It serves as another reminder of what we did. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Eva to find a text or overhear something she shouldn't have, or for Adam to make a mistake and say anything that reveals our identities. John recently expressed how pleased he is to have me in his life. He explained that he couldn't fathom spending his days with anybody else. I needed to leave the room before I fell into tears. I've made a mess that I can't clean up, and now I'm just trying to figure out how to survive it. But deep down I know I might not deserve to. So I'm at a crossroads, staring down two pathways, and I'm not sure which one to take. If I stay, I'll carry this guilt with me for the rest of my life. Every time John looks at me, smiles at me, or holds my hand, I'll feel the weight of what I've done pressed down on me, and every time Eva refers to me as her sister-in-law or friend, I'll feel like a fraud. But is it any better if I leave, walk away from everything we've built together without telling him why? John will spend the rest of his life wondering what went wrong. He will blame himself, and he does not deserve it. Neither of them do. Through it all, I learned something about myself. Love isn't always enough. Occasionally the person you love the most can't offer you everything you need, and occasionally the thing you need the most comes at a price you can't afford. So, I'm asking you what you'd do. Speak the truth and risk tearing everything apart, or depart quietly and attempt to spare them the pain. And if you think this story is worth spreading, then subscribe to our channel for more such stories and Lee. The video. If it struck a chord with you, share it with someone who can offer advice. Perhaps we can figure out where to go from here.